Autism experts from around the world are in Singapore for the Asia Pacific Autism Conference. Over 5 days, they'll share their latest research and best practices.
The issues include how to help those with autism transition smoothly to adulthood, get jobs and integrate into society. And we're joined by Loh Wai Mooi, First Vice President of the Autism Resource Centre, and Dr Damian Milton, Lecturer at the UK's National Autistic Society. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank you for having us.
And Dr Milton, I'll come to you first. We understand that you yourself were diagnosed with autism only at the age of 36, and that only came to light after your child was also found to be on the spectrum. Tell us more about what made you sort of investigate further.
Well, I'd always felt different from other people from as long as I can remember, from a very young age. And but I didn't really have a name for my feelings and experiences. So when my son was diagnosed at a very young age and was quite clearly autistic, I started researching the topic more. And it was when I started reading personal accounts that I connected to them and it made sense to me rather than the clinical kind of stories of autism. So when I did that, I realized, these accounts are talking more about me in some ways than even they were about my son and his needs, which was interesting.
And that does really sort of highlight the spectrum that autism can sort of appear on, doesn't it?
It's very broad. And my son would be said to have severe intellectual disabilities and very few words, whilst I'm articulate and have a doctorate and the rest of it. So quite a broad spectrum of differing needs, but some commonalities as well.
Wai Mooi, let's bring you in on the conversation here. You have a child who's been diagnosed with autism.
Yes.
How do children with autism learn any differently from other children?
Well, for my son, maybe I'll talk about two traits. One is communication. He thrives when communication is clear and direct. So riddles and sarcasm don't work on him. He also thrives in an orderly environment. So schedule helps. And once he actually took on board the schedule, he now has a mental schedule. So he actually can perform all that is required of him in his job quite independently because he has already gotten in his mind the schedule.
We understand as well that, especially these children in Singapore, aged 16 to 15, they must attend government-funded schools unless they apply for exemptions. How then can we help them integrate into sort of the mainstream education system?
I think integration is always both ways. I think just as we must make the effort to include them, they will also, of course, have to be helped to be included. How can they be integrated? It must be meaningful, it must be appropriate. At the moment, Path-like School, where my son attended, we have integration into mainstream schools for secondary children, where they go into a mainstream environment, and integration takes place at the level of the academics, social, physical, and in terms of sharing of teaching resources and facilities.
Dr. Milton, you mentioned earlier the fact that you were diagnosed as an adult with autism at the age, in your 30s.
36.
36. So, you know, for a long time, were you coping? How did you learn to live with the challenges?
Well, I've coped a lot better since being diagnosed because mainly by learning about autism, learning from other autistic people, I've coped much better and built quite a successful career now in academic work in the field. But before then I struggled a great deal in work, particularly in relationships, just across life. And so the diagnosis, not in itself, but the work after that and finding out more about autism has really helped be for me to be kinder to myself, I would say.
Have you noticed as well, I mean, this conference is very much geared to helping autistic people sort of integrate into society and to find sort of their own place in the world. Are you finding, having experienced it with your son and with yourself firsthand, is society in a more understanding place than it was when you were young when it comes to autism?
Yes, but I still think we have a long way to go. I would say one of the biggest barriers is the lack of understanding of autism in the general public and from other people. And one of the biggest barriers was that lack of understanding of myself in earlier life. So that can have a big effect on one's life. And so events like this can really help in bringing attention to and build that understanding up.
When we're picking up on what Dr. Milton has mentioned about this lack of understanding, how can we then perhaps build greater understanding, more interactions between people who do and don't have autism for greater understanding?
I think first and foremost, autism is a spectrum. There is no cookie-cutter autistic person. But there are some fundamentals that we ought to understand when we communicate with them. One, for example, is that I think some of them do take a little bit more time to process. So let them have that time in order that they may respond. Include them in your communication. Sometimes some of them may have difficulty making decisions. If that's the case, help them make choices clear. Maybe when it comes to filling forms, even when we look at the forms that we have to fill in our daily lives, we can make them more autism friendly. These are the things that would certainly help them function better and feel more included.
Well, all the best with the upcoming conference, and thank you so much for coming into the studios to share your perspectives with us. We really appreciate it. We've been speaking there to Loh Wai Mooi, First Vice President of the Autism Resource Centre, and Dr. Damian Milton, Lecturer at the UK's National Autistic Society.